Recapping House of Earth and Blood chapter by chapter, this is chapter 13. Micah, Hunt, and Isaiah have just visited Bryce and given her the news that she's going to be investigating a murder, and so they are now on top of the gallery on the roof. Hunt says that there's nothing up there except for equipment and the doorway to the gallery below. Hunt asks Micah if he really thinks that Bryce can find whoever is behind this. Micah just says that this is a situation that requires that they use all available weapons. Hunt looks out over the city and thinks about how compared to others, Crescent City is actually pretty advanced and has progressed, and all of that is thanks to Micah. A male of progress. Males of Progress would be an excellent band name. A male of progress, of tolerance, they said. Hunt often wondered what it would feel like to rip out his throat. So, you know, cash. And then he's like, that's unfair to Micah because he was born into this power and into slave ownership, I guess. Because I guess that's like a fine thing for a slave to think, is he doesn't blame his slave owner because they were born into it. Okay, Sarah J. Maas. Also, this entire page long, Micah isn't that bad. After the bombshell of Bryce is gonna have to investigate this murder, the fact that we're taking a page to just stand here and look at the city and talk about how Micah isn't that bad, it makes me think that Micah is that bad. So, official guess, I guess, is that Micah is gonna be pretty damn bad by the end of this. Micah says that Sabine will definitely be putting her own people to investigate this, but he doesn't want the wolves to solve the murder. He wants them to do it. Hunt asks if this investigation will count towards his quota, and Micah says that if Hunt solves this case quickly before the summit, he'll lower his debts to 10 more kills. Micah tells Hunt not to tell anybody about this, and then also make sure to warn Hunt to keep his dick in his pants and his hands to himself, or else he'll cut them both off. And then we get a clarification that they would both grow back, because immortals, those who have completed the drop, can basically regrow anything. I don't know why I found that so funny. And Micah's like, I will chop it off. And Hunt's like, it would grow back, but it wouldn't be fun. And it's like, no problems, because messing around with the half-human assistant is like the least of his priorities, which is real funny. See, this is why I make the guesses that I do, because it's like telegraphed that, of course, he is going to find it very hard to keep it in his pants, which is why I like the whole, Micah's not that bad, to me means he is that bad. This is how you read Sarah J. Maas. Does it feel telegraphed? It probably is. Guess the opposite thing is true. Micah leaves and Hunt and Isaiah keep chatting. Hunt wonders if there's some sort of catch to this whole solve the murder and have only 10 more kills deal, but Isaiah doesn't think so because Micah doesn't scheme that way. Isaiah tries to guess Micah's motivation behind doing this and says maybe like he wants Hunt to be loyal, and Hunt is like, I'm a slave. He doesn't need my loyalty. So Isaiah's just like, I don't freaking know, just don't question it. Hunt blew out a breath. I know, he says. Isaiah asks if he can find whoever is behind this, and Hunt says he basically doesn't have a choice. And Hunt says that he just can't stop thinking about Sandriel's visit. Hunt blew out a breath. She did that twice. And it's not that you can't like blow out multiple breaths, like maybe he's very sighy right now, but to avoid that sort of thing where it's like, did she just forget that she just said that? Like you would add Hunt blew out another breath so that the reader knows that you know that you've used this twice, but Hunt blew out a breath. Hunt blew out a breath. Classic. Isaiah says that Micah also threw Hunt another bone by assigning him guard duty over Bryce, which means that he doesn't have to be at the barracks while Sandriel's there. Hunt thinks about how Crescent City isn't Sandriel's scene and there won't be anything for her to do here, and like what she likes to do is torture people, murder people. I don't know. I feel like if those are your hobbies, you can find stuff to do anywhere. I guess she has like a pit fighting arena sort of deal. And Hunt tells us that Sandriel and Pollux must have been enjoying the hell out of the pain that flowed from the arena. Isaiah gives Hunt permission to like never come back to the barracks, not just as he's guarding Bryce, but to like watch her at all times and basically sleep on the roof of the building across from her building. Hunt is like, yeah, I've slept in worse. Plus, Hunt says that he wants to keep an eye on Bryce, not only to protect her, but because in his mind, she still could be a suspect. And then he wonders who the hell might make it onto Bryce's suspect list. Hunt thanks Isaiah for like allowing him the opportunity to never be around Sandriel, and then thinks once again about what a good soldier Isaiah is. We cut to Bryce inside of the showroom, and Jessica pops back up on Fantasy Zoom or whatever, and Bryce says that the governor must be desperate to want her to solve a murder, and Jessica's like, I don't know what his deal is, but basically you can't just go be a detective and forget about your job. Bryce thinks that she'll probably wind up dead too, because anybody strong enough to summon the demon that killed Danica and the entire pack could probably just wipe her out. So Jessica tells her to keep Hunt close, and Bryce bristles at this because she's not some little female in need of a big strong warrior to guard her. But then she's like, well, I do. That's the whole point, that I do need somebody to guard me. But then she says that she's not going to make it easy for Hunt, which is just absolutely stupid and ridiculous because, ma'am, do you want to die? Whatever. She's like, make a list of suspects indeed, and like track her last locations. Like, she's so upset that he told her to do some very basic things to detect. Like, okay, if you're gonna Nancy Drew this, you need to Nancy Drew this. I don't know why you're so mad that Hunt told you to make a list of suspects. Jessica has another call, so she has to hang up, and then the gallery is left in silence, which makes Bryce realize that Lahaba, for one, seems not to be eavesdropping. There's no tapping on the iron door to fill the silence, and no whispering from the little fire sprite. Bryce thinks about how Danica never mentioned the vampire Maximus, and it doesn't make sense that this would be a random killing, because why would they specifically just pick Danica and Bryce's apartment randomly? So it had to be targeted, and Bryce thinks that her connection to Maximus is the coincidence. Like, Danica was targeted, she doesn't know why Maximus was targeted, but her connection to both those people is probably a coincidence. And so what do we guess? And it's probably not. She has another client meeting coming up, so she has to like think about this later, and then she is like, I've got no time, I've got to think about this later. But then we sit here and we think about how she's been working on her resume and cover letter to apply for other jobs, but that's probably going to have to go on hold because she has to solve a murder now. She can't apply for jobs. She opens up her phone and she looks at the last messages that Connor sent her. Bryce looses a long breath and then says that she's definitely going to find the person who did this. It's like the 17th time that we've heard this from her, which I get, like, after, like, you have to find this person for her to think, I will. But we don't need to fill an entire chapter with her thinking this over and over again. She briefly thinks about updating Juniper and Fury, even though Fury isn't talking to her, but Micah told her not to talk to anybody about this, so she figures she'll just tell Juniper in person. And then she glances at the door, and then she heads downstairs, and that's the end of the chapter. It was about 10 pages, 22 M-dashes, 3 doors, and 2 hells. The whole, like, progression of this, of, like, now Bryce has to solve these murders, like, it is absolutely ridiculous that we are in this situation. I have read other mysteries where, like, the unlikely person is the one investigating it, with varying degrees of, okay, it makes no sense that this person would be the one being pulled into the investigation. I'm not gonna get hung up on this, on the fact that it's absolutely ridiculous, especially because everybody seems to be acknowledging that this is stupid as hell. Honestly, I wish they wouldn't go on and on about how stupid it is that Bryce is in this situation. But the reason that, like, I didn't mention it last chapter and I'm not going to get hung up on it is because the way that they keep acknowledging that there is absolutely no reason for Bryce to be investigating in this way makes me think that there's some secret reason why they're pulling Bryce into the investigating in this way. And I refuse to give this book the satisfaction of being like, why is this happening? Only for Sarah J. Maas to later go, a reason. So sure, go ahead, Bryce. Yeah, you make that list of suspects. We start chapter 14 with Rune Danon, which, thanks to TikTok, all I can hear is a sound that goes, Rune Danon, Crown Prince of the Valbaran family. I don't even go to this fandom and I have that sound stuck in my head. Rune is standing before the towering oak door that leads to his father's study, and he, like, kind of braces himself. He takes a breath and then he takes another breath. And then he knocks on the door, goes into the room, and shuts the door. We get a lot of description about the king of the Autumn Court's study, and Rune tells us that his father is always like tinkering away in here. Rune makes a joke about whether or not he should be wearing a hazmat suit, and the fact that he uses the phrase hazmat suit when this is like fantasy Earth, presumably like so many freaking years in the future, and all of their technology is super different than ours, but he still uses hazmat suit. Okay. His dad is not for joking and is just like, state your business. Rune tells his father about the visit that he got from Isaiah because Maximus the vampire was murdered, and his father is like, yeah, I know, I got that report too. And Rune is like, you were gonna tell me when? And then his dad is like, I don't answer to you. So then Rune can have some more feelings about his bad dad and about how he's starborn and has the star sword. But he still answers to his father, even though he's old. He dropped into immortality 50 years ago. But his father has been ruling all this time. And it will be probably another few centuries of this, of having to knock on doors before entering a room. I realize that Rune is answering a question right now, but I don't even know what the question was because there was a page worth of info dumping in between. This is how dialogue happens in this book. Oh, his father was just like, obviously you already know, so why did I need to tell you? No, that wasn't the last thing he said. Oh, his father asked... I'm doing my best. His father asked if Isaiah said anything of note, and Rune says no, but Maximus did have a business meeting with Bryce right before he died. And his father is like, that girl, I told you to just tell her to stay quiet. It doesn't say he growled, but his lip did curl. So like, that was my interpretation. Now Rune has feelings about how his father always refers to Bryce as like that girl. King hasn't spoken Bryce's name since her first and last visit that happened 12 years ago. The visit did not go well. We won't learn why right now. Rune defends Bryce, but the king is like, it doesn't look good that she was at the club both nights and knew both of the people that have been brutally murdered in the exact same way. Rune continues his defense and says that Bryce has nothing to do with this, and Micah must believe that because he's assigned some of the 33rd to guard over Bryce. Rune gets angry enough that his power starts thrumming through him, and he's got shadow magic. His father abruptly changes the subject to the fact that it's time for Rune to get married. The king says that it is Rune's duty to protect their bloodline and to produce an heir, and when Rune visited the oracle, which is a rite of passage, the oracle said that he would be a fair and just king. Rune says he is not getting married, but his father says that they need the alliance. The bride that he intends is Hypaxia, who is the new witch queen after her mother has died. Rune doesn't know much about Hypaxia because there are no photos of her. I guess she doesn't have fantasy social media or whatever. I don't know. Where would the photos be? Fantasy social media, right? Rune is like, I will not marry her. And the king goes, you are the crown prince of the Valbaran Fae. It's just the only way you can say it now. Basically, he doesn't have a choice. And then he just randomly is like, Luna's horn remains at large. If you'll remember, back in chapter 2, Bryce told us that the horn got stolen during that eclipse, the power blackout that happened, and she was tasked with finding it. And then that just went away. But here it is again. Rune puts all of this together and figures that this all has to do with the meeting that the king had with Micah. And the king shares that Micah basically insinuated that the Fae aren't as strong as they used to be. Their magic is fading. The first starborn prince could blind an enemy with a flash of starlight, and Rune gets headaches when he does little palm light. My puppy is not enjoying this at all. Micah continued to insult the strength of the Fae by saying that they gave up the horn in the first place and let it be lost for 2 years. Rune doesn't understand why it's a big deal because the horn has no power, absolutely no power. Whenever Sarah J. Maas says something has no power, then we immediately guess that it is in fact extremely powerful. I mean, I say this and all she's said that about is Bryce, no power, we know it's powerful. And now the horn.
Butterfly in the sky, I can go twice as high. Take a look, it's in a book. a reading rainbow.
The king admits that he's been looking for the horn this whole time and hasn't been able to find it, and now the assignment belongs to Rune. Rune heads to the door and then slams the door, and as he's seething about everything his father has told him, he thinks at least his father doesn't know what the oracle really told him, and that was that the royal bloodline will end with him. That was 12 pages, 25 M dashes, and 6 doors. And my least favorite M dashes of the chapter come in this God-forsaken sentence. That Rune did not possess his father's flames, the flames of most of the Valbaran Fae, that he instead possessed Avalin abilities, more than Rune ever let on, to summon and walk through shadows, had been an unforgivable insult. What? Who? What? Disgusting. This is chapter 15. We've got another cider today for our fortifying beverage. My absolute favorite character, Syrinx, starts us off, and he is pawing at the window while Bryce is on the couch and watching TV. She gets up to see what's going on, and she sees that Hunt is standing on the roof of the opposite building watching her. Bryce smiles at him and then shuts the curtain, and then like a second later she gets a call from an unknown number, and it's Hunt growling at her to open the curtains because he wants to watch TV too. Bryce laughs at the idea that the big bad murder dude is watching a dating show with her, and then she asks him what he's even doing on that roof, and he says clearly he's doing what he was ordered to do in protecting her. Bryce wants to know how he got her number, and it's in her file, her angel file or whatever. He asks her to open the curtains again, and she still says no. He asks for an invitation inside, and she says double no. I hate antagonism to lovers things that like there isn't a real clear picture of like why these two people like dislike each other to the level that they do. This is very much giving that energy. Like, I don't know. Anyways, let's keep reading. Hunt reminds her that they've been ordered to get to the bottom of the murder, so they're about to get real up close and personal. Bryce goes back to the window and opens it and tells him that she was picked to investigate these murders and he's just the backup, which is hilarious that this is the fight that she wants to pick Honey. You've never investigated a goddamn thing in your life, but okay. Hunt wants to skip this whole pecking order thing, so he asks what Syrinx even is, and so Bryce tells him that it's a chimera. Hunt says that he looks expensive, which Bryce confirms that he was. Hunt is like, your apartment looks damn expensive too. The sources must pay you well. And Bryce says that she does, which is kind of a lie because we know that all of this money came from Danica's will. And apparently Hunt doesn't know that, which I find it really funny that they've got like an angel file on Bryce and it doesn't say that she inherited a shit ton of money when Danica died. I feel like that would be a key thing in the sort of investigation that they must have done into Danica's death, is that she had a will and left a ton of money to Bryce, but maybe there's something shadowy and secret there that we'll find out later. Hunt tells him to keep the curtains open, but she just gives him a little mocking wave and closes the curtains. So he texts her, and Hunt points out that some bad shit is going down in the city, and she's been gifted this protection, and she's busting his balls for what? It's a good question. I also don't know. Bryce hears a thud against the window, so she goes to check it out, and of course, it's Hunt, just like flapping, flying and right outside the window. I don't, he doesn't flap this way, but it's a funny mental picture nonetheless. Hunt tells her that she can make this investigation easy or she can make it hard. She starts to say something back, but he's like, spare me. Neither of them have a say in this arrangement, so she's like wasting her breath about these boundaries, and she should be working on that list of suspects and Danica's movements. And Bryce is like, stop telling me what to do. Oh my god, it's so freaking annoying. He's telling her to do investigation. Like she's been tasked with all I want is for the investigation to start. And honestly, I think that's what's pissing me off the most about her just being like, I don't want to. It is because he's asking you to do the investigation, and I don't understand. Hunt tells her that he's going to do whatever the hell it takes to solve the case, even if it means tying her to a chair until she writes those lists. Bryce is like, bondage, nice. Hunt's eyes darken, and he's like, do not fuck with me. It's with the periods, do not fuck with me. Bryce thinks that he's an alcohol. Meanwhile, Syrinx is dancing at her feet. And so Hunt's attention goes to Syrinx, and he calls Syrinx a smart beastie and says that he's smarter than his owner. And Bryce thinks he's the king of alcohols. We cut away from there and into Hunt's perspective as he's thinking about how much trouble he would be in to basically just chuck Bryce into the Istros, whatever those are. I hope it's far and terrible. Basically, he is standing outside a nail salon waiting for her to get her nails done. While he's waiting, Hunt calls Isaiah. Isaiah knows where Hunt is, and Hunt says that Isaiah probably tracked his location using the beacon on Hunt's phone, but he still looks at the nearest fantasy CCTV and tells us that somebody is always watching in this city. I'm sure we will at some point forget that. And then I will get to ask, what about the fantasy CCTV? Hunt asks Isaiah if he's aware that chimeras are able to pick locks, open doors, and jump between two places. Isaiah didn't know that. Hunt found this out this morning when Syrinx just appeared next to him on the roof and bit him on the ass when he was starting to doze off. Still my favorite character. Hunt explains that he's waiting for Bryce to get her nails done, and Isaiah's pause sounds a hell of a lot like he's about to burst out laughing. Hunt says that the bad thing about this is that she isn't gunning for the murderer. This is making him suspicious because she seemingly has absolutely no interest in finding out who killed her best friend and her best friend's entire pack. I don't want to agree with Hunt. This is making me so upset. Hunt hangs up with Isaiah and then keeps looking at Bryce and whatever the hell. She's getting done with her nails. And then we get to the part where I feel extra sucky for agreeing with Hunt because he starts thinking about how with Bryce's looks, she would be accustomed to the doors that opened for her. Bryce finishes her nails and heads for the door. Then she opens the glass door and he explodes at her. And then he's like, I told you to make the list of suspects and the last movements. And she goes, if you're so good at investigating, why don't you look into it and spare me the effort? What? Is she investigating? Hunt is like, I thought you would have a personal motivation in figuring out who's behind this. And Bryce is like, don't assume anything about my motivations. And he's like, do you have a problem with me? And she says, I don't really care enough about you to have a problem, which is a load of bullshit. This is so stupid. And he's like, can you please make the list of suspects? And she's just like, don't nag at me. And then they're at her apartment building and the doors slide open. Hunt points out that she better stop digging around or else somebody's going to think that she has something to hide. She's not investigating this murder. And that seems to catch her by surprise, oh. So he just smiles at her and tells her to hurry up because she doesn't want to be late for work. We come back to Bryce and she's like, yeah, going to the nail salon was so worth it because I pissed off Hunt. She's at work now and Lahaba's like, I don't see why you can't just let the angel inside here. And Bryce is like, because. We get a little info jump here about Lahaba, who is a fire sprite and also she is a slave. Lahaba tells Bryce to buy her freedom from Jessica and then she can go live at her apartment and keep her baths and all her food warm. And Bryce thinks to herself that she knows that Lahaba's power is actually way greater than that and far outranks her own. Because I don't know if you've heard, but Bryce is not at all powerful at all. Blah, blah, blah. Bryce is randomly describing things to us in the gallery and says that there's a killer sound system in the gallery as well. And then she goes, not that I dance here. Not anymore. And then Bryce finally braces herself for the work she has to do, not paperwork or the client that's coming, but what she has to do tonight. And then she's like, God help me when Hunt gets wind of what I'm going to be up to. But it will be satisfying to see his reaction. And that's the freaking end of this chapter. Oh my God, I cannot believe we're 180 pages, 15 chapters in. And we just had an entire chapter where she went to get her nails done and they argued for pages and pages about a list of suspects, about starting on this investigation. I am beside myself. I am beside myself at this pacing. What is this? Oh my God. Nothing is happening. That was 15 pages, 40 M dashes, 2 dances, 2 alpha holes, 3 hells, and 5 doors. I was thinking to myself, I'll just record a couple of chapters when I sit down, but then I get through one chapter and I'm so over it. I gotta go. This is chapter 16. Our fortifying beverage for the chapter is a classic chai bubble tea. So we start the chapter off with Rune and he's super high. He's just smoked a lot of mirth root and he's laying on his bed with specially shaped Fey headphones over his ears. It's just a really weird detail to include. Like, I wonder if it just said he had headphones on, if I would go, oh, but his ears are weird. I don't imagine that I would have thought those thoughts. Maybe somebody would have. But I love that Sarah J. Maas was like, have no fear. I've thought of this already. So whatever, he's listening to music, he's high, he's drifting, and he knows he was compelled to do this because of the meeting with his father. He thinks that his father can go to hell. We keep reading about how out of it he is until he catches the scent of a Fey female. He's trying to open his eyes, but they feel too heavy, and he thinks, where the hell have the controls to his body gone? Rune finally recognizes the scent as belonging to Bryce. When he finally manages to open his eyes, she is standing at the foot of his bed, her whiskey-colored eyes full of amusement. Rune takes off his special little headphones and is looking at his sister, and he thinks, at least for once, she is in normal clothes. Even if the jeans were painted on and the cream colored sweater left little to the imagination. Sarah J. Maas's commitment to telling us every single scene how tight Bryce's clothing is now reaching ridiculous levels when it's her brother that's like, all them jeans are tight. Rune is still having trouble processing all of this on account of the drugs. Rune notices Bryce's amber eyes, and Bryce is like, fucking hell, before she aims for the door and flings open the door. She is off to get him some water. As Rune follows after her, he thinks more about how grody this Fey frat house is. The chandelier is askew because somebody was hanging from it, and there's a beer pong table. Even though I know that at 183 pages into this so far, we're still in the beginning of this book and we're seeing everybody freaking still at the beginning of their arc, so who knows what kind of man Rune Danon will be when we get to the end of this. But I just find it hilarious that people drool over him, and apparently he's like a 75-year-old frat boy. Okay, sir. I feel like I'm conveying that I think that this is incredibly stupid, but I don't know how to exactly pinpoint why. Maybe it has to do with the fact that I picked this stupid book back up after taking a break. We're almost 200 pages in, and now we're just taking a tour of the Fey frat house. Oh my god. Rune's friends are downstairs, so Tristan Flynn is the son of a lord, and he's good looking, charming as hell, and also lethal. Bryce heads to the kitchen, but by the time that Rune tries to follow after her, she's already back and standing in the doorway with his water bottle. The music is pumping, and Bryce stands there and tilts her head as she's listening to it so that Rune can be like, ah, yes, the Fey inclination to appreciate music, and then to also remind us that Bryce loves to dance. Rune focuses enough to ask Bryce why she's here, and she's like, I already told you I need to talk to you. But now they are surrounded by his friends, and we get 2 pages of exposition on the friends. We hear again about what the ordeal is and the drop. I'm so happy we spent 2 pages on that before we cycle back around to Rune being like, what are you doing here? And Bryce being like, I need to talk to you. Clearly she doesn't want to talk in front of the friends, so they go back to Rune's bedroom. Bryce leans against the door, finally outs with her question, and that is if he has heard anything about what the Viper Queen has been up to. Bryce wants to talk to the Viper Queen because Maximus was killed on her turf. Rune thinks that this is a terrible idea, and as he's questioning why the heck she's doing any of this, he finds out that Micah has employed Bryce to investigate this murder with Jessica's blessing. They go kind of back and forth with him being like, no you won't, and her being like, yes I will. And in fact, Bryce says that if Rune interferes, she's going to make his life a living hell. Bryce opens the door. She asks him to keep her informed about any of the Viper Queen's movements. Rune is like, wait, I'll go with you. And she's just like, bye. And she heads out the front door. Rune's besties are downstairs looking at him like, what's going on? And he jumps off the second floor landing and strides out the front door. And outside they see that Bryce Bryce has crossed the street to meet with Hunt. Declan is like, what the hell? Rune is really upset by Hunt's presence, and he like rushes out into traffic and like slams his hand down on some unsuspecting commuter is just trying to like probably make it home or something, when some 75-year-old frat boy just like books it into traffic and then damages her car. She's having a terrible time. Across the street, Rune confronts Hunt and is like, what are you doing here? And Hunt is like, I'm on protection duty. And Rune says, like hell you're watching her. Hunt shrugs, but his onyx eyes hold an unspoken challenge. And they just kind of like face off against each other, with Hunt calling up his lightning so it's like sparkling around him, and Rune thinks about calling up his shadows, but he's too high. Bryce is already like walking away, and Rune tells Hunt not to let Bryce go to the Viper Queen. Hunt is surprised by this, so it's clear to Rune that he has no idea what Bryce is even planning. And with that, Hunt takes after Bryce. Rune is left to think about how much he wants to smoke some more so he can mellow the hell out. There's this weird little ending bit where Rune is watching Hunt and Bryce walk away. He watches as like Bryce speeds up, and then Hunt would like speed up to match her pace, but then she would drop back, and then Hunt drops back to match her pace, and then she'd edge him to the right off the curb and into oncoming traffic, which these two like jumping and dancing into oncoming traffic, they're public menaces. And then Hunt also has to like jump into oncoming traffic. I am once again astonished by the need to share these details with us, how freaking stupid Bryce is, surprised that Hunt hasn't actually just offed her by now. It's fine. We don't need to catch a murderer or anything. Let's keep playing walking games. As Rune is watching them playing their walking games, he thinks about how weird it is that the murders have started again, just as his father had ordered him to find the horn, when last time Danica was murdered just after the horn had gone missing. So he plans to figure out what the connection is, and he has to start with finding the horn. That was about 12 pages, and we had 7 doors, 8 hells, 3 special colored eyes, 1 dance, 26 M-dashes. Here's my least favorite M-dash of the chapter. Rune rolled his eyes, but it was nearly midnight. The rest of it doesn't matter. I just love that she's like, but M-dash. What do you think a butt does? What do you think a butt does?